good afternoon, and welcome to a talk called Artificial Intelligence Through the Ages. It doesn't say much, but my name is Vasco Veloso, and I'm going to try to guide you in a little bit of time traveling so that we can actually look at what is known today as artificial intelligence, that many people actually believe that it is something novel. Because, well, let's face it, it has been only a couple of years since we have been flooded almost every day with news about self-driving vehicles, algorithms that analyze our behavior and decide what we're going to watch or listen to or read up next. But, you know, the truth is that the term artificial intelligence and research on this field is not that new. It started in the 1950s, 1960s, give or take a few years. And the most interesting thing is that what we today refer to as artificial intelligence may have appeared in literature and movies and other art forms actually quite before that time. So let's take a trip down to the past, and let's go with the farthest reference to what we know today as artificial intelligence. And it actually showed up in the work by this famous individual. Well, people disagree whether it was actually one person or more. And we are going back to antique Greece. Let's take a look at Homer's work. And this is 800 years before Christ. Some people say it is 700 years, but who cares? A century, more or less. And we are going to look at Iliad, his first book. And there's a passage there where the Hephaestus's god's furnace is described. And the furnaces are described as being completely automatic. So Hephaestus wanted the furnace to produce something, and it would be set automatically, temperatures would be managed automatically and would be maintained perfectly to his desires. And on top of that, he actually manufactured tripods. Now, back in the time, a tripod was a special object. And these were even more interesting because Hephaestus could send his tripods on his behalf to the assembly of gods. The tripods would go to the assembly of gods, do whatever it is that gods did at that assembly, and then would return home. Now, these are, of course, artificial elements that were capable of going alone to a location and back. This fits our current definition of an autonomous vehicle. And, well, some of you may argue that, yeah, this is a work of fiction about a god. So, of course, a god can make whatever, any object do whatever they please. Yeah, I'll give you that. However, if we remain in the same time period and we continue looking at the work of Homer, but this time we switch to the other book, to the Odyssey, there is a passage, and in that passage, the Phoenician king is sending some travelers off, and he likes those travelers so much that he offers them a ride in one of their vessels. And what I'm going to do now is one of the capital scenes of presentations. I'm going to read from it, but that's only because my words could never be better than Homer's. And so it states that the Phoenicians have no pilots, their vessels have no rudders, but the ships themselves understand what it is that we are thinking about and want. They know all the cities and countries in the whole world and can traverse the sea just as well, even when it is covered with mist and cloud, so that there is no danger of being wrecked or coming to any harm. So, in other words, the Phoenician king was telling to these travelers, hey, take one of our ships, and don't worry, the ship will know where you want to go, and will take you there. And it does not matter visibility or sea conditions or whatever, the ship will take you there. All right, so let's get this straight. This was 800 years before Christ, and Homer was already dreaming about autonomous sea vessels, because, well, at the time, traveling by sea was the best way to travel. And even today, we are still far away from realizing this. We still want this. And there are pilots. Some trials were made. Even this year in Amsterdam, a pilot will start with autonomous boats in the canals. But we are still not there. And we are definitely not in the part of the ships understanding what it is that we are thinking about. Definitely not. Moving forward through time, 18th century. Mr. de Condillac wrote a book called Le Traité des Sensations, or the Treaty of Sensations. And despite its name, it is considered an important philosophical text. He addresses the problem of the duality between the body and the mind. And to make his point, he gives an example. So he says, let's imagine a statue. And that statue is animated, and it has an empty soul. So the soul is like a blank canvas. And he argues that if we could feed sensations, one sensation at a time, to that statue, and if we kept doing that, then eventually that statue would absorb, would learn everything that there is to learn about the human existence. Again, let's look at what we are doing today. Today we have this technique called machine learning, and although we are far away from the generalistic purpose, what we do is that we find a model and then we feed it information. So today we are using the same principles that philosophers have described in the 18th century to train our models. This, again, this is not new. We are still being used, and we are still using the exact same principles that philosophers have described throughout the centuries. Still in the 18th century, people were still dreaming about machines doing things autonomously. The Turk, also known as the mechanical Turk, was a machine that allegedly could play chess and could beat any human in existence. It was displayed in fairs and events, and even was shown off to some kings and queens. But, well, unfortunately for their builders, soon it was discovered that it was a hoax, and it actually had a human operator. An excellent player of chess, no doubt, but still, there was a human operator behind it. People kept dreaming about chess. And of course, this had to fail, but no worries. Fast forward to the 20th century. The first machine that was actually capable of playing some chess with a human. Now, the machine was unable to play a full game of chess. This was in 1912. But it was capable of playing chess starting from a specific position. It was capable of playing the situation in which one player has one king and one rook, and the other player has the king. The machine would play with the king and the rook, and would win every single time, hands down. You may argue that it was a simple scenario, but this was a machine that was considered very advanced for its time. Again, this is 1912. And the machine was actually capable of calculating the next move based on whatever it was that the human player would do with their king. Moving forward, half of the 20th century, we're still now back to literature and to the well-known author Isaac Asimov. In where he imagined a world with positronic robots that had positronic brains and could actually be intelligent. So he was talking about general intelligence, and he was known by the 3 rules of robotics. Going to the cinema, who does not know about HAL 9000? HAL 9000 was not a robot, but it was an operating system that was capable of learning from humans. Unfortunately, the humans detected some malfunctions in the system and eventually decided to turn it off. But by that time, the operating system had learned enough from humans to decide that it needed to protect itself. And which better way to protect itself than by killing all humans in the spaceship? HAL 9000 became known by its famous sentence, which was pretty much, "Sorry, Dave, I can't do that." And I would say we are pretty much in big trouble whenever a machine answers back to us. Half literature, half cinema, still dreaming of androids and generic artificial intelligence. Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and a character that I'm particularly fond of, Marvin, the paranoid android. Marvin was a depressed android because no one in the entire galaxy, human or otherwise, had been able to give him a task that would occupy more than the smallest fraction of its enormous brain. In fact, he was so frustrated that one of his quotes has him saying that the best conversation he had had in a million years had been with a coffee machine. I don't know what that says about the humans he met, but I'm guessing that either that was a great coffee machine or the humans were not that smart anyway. Now, we, as researchers, continued to be intrigued by chess. It looks like a really simple game with simple rules, but as you play it, you realize that it can become actually quite complex. The number of possible moves is very large. So it was, of course, an interesting theme for research in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So eventually, in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue computer could beat the Grand Master Garry Kasparov at chess. It is one of the landmarks of artificial intelligence, or in this case, machine learning applied to games. With time, more interesting challenges also came. I'm pretty sure lots of us have heard about the latest developments in this field with machines playing the game Go and actually beating humans at it in some matches. Go is way more complicated than chess, and it poses a great challenge for today's machine learning abilities. And of course, then the question begs to be asked. We got Deep Blue in 1997, a long way from the Quevedo's chess-playing machine in 1912. And then the question is, of course, what is going to happen tomorrow? Tomorrow is a big question. We don't know if we are going to end in a state like in the Matrix, or, on the other hand, if we are going to land in an utopia with green fields, butterflies, and we are all going to be happy. But what I do suspect, to be honest, is that in, I don't know, maybe 100 years or so, there will be someone in an event probably almost like this one, saying to an audience, similar to what we have here today, and going, hey, look what those guys were talking about in the 21st century. Thank you for being here with me. I hope that I have entertained and enlightened you, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the online platform. Have a nice day.